Order. Our first order of business is approval of minutes. The committee assistant sent out her, as usual, excellent minutes for January 22nd. The chair would entertain a motion. Mr. Ranking Minority Member.
I move the acceptance of the most amazing minutes I have seen, and hope everybody supports that.
And those minutes are so good, I'm not going to second them, I'm going to third them.
Okay. All right. On that, is there any discussion? Hearing none, you've heard the motion to approve the minutes for January 22nd. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The minutes are approved. The next order of business is bill introduction, and the chair recognizes Representative Sutton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to introduce 26 RS 3291, the residency bill for candidates.
All right. Are there any questions on the bill? Are there any? I believe the number is 3289.
3289. I have the wrong one written down. Sorry about that. Okay. 3289 for that one.
Okay.
I don't even like
questions on that bill.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any objections to this bill being requested for introduction? Okay. Without objections, it will be introduced.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other bill introductions? Representative Berquist.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I have a couple that I'd like to submit. BRS 3290, and that is difference in rules for dissolution of a third-class city, and that would pertain to that. And also RS 3291, which was previously mentioned under a different title, and that is for a lease purchase protest petition. And these may go to another committee, but I'd like to submit them at this point.
Are there any questions on either of these bills? Is there any objection to them being introduced? Seeing no objections, they'll be requested for introduction.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other bill introductions, recognizing that this is the last day to do that in this committee? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next order of business, which is a hearing on House Bill 2448. And Mr. Advisor, could you give us a rundown on that bill?
Mike Heim with the Revisor of Statutes Office. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this amends a statute dealing with driver's licenses. The amendment is in line 12 there, adding the word citizenship status. So it basically, the sentence would read, license shall bear the class or classes of the motor vehicle that the license is entitled to drive, a distinguishing number, the full legal name, citizenship status is the date of birth, gender, address, and so on.
Are there any questions for the revisor? Okay, thank you. All right, so committee, what I had hoped to do today was, so that we were talking about what we're actually going to do with this bill, have an amendment, but we don't have it today, but I'll tell you off the top, what I intend to do with this when we work it is two things. First, on the description of how non-citizen is designated, in addition to putting non-citizen on it, I want it the ID to be portrait, kind of like the minor's license, so it's easily identifiable as a non-citizen ID. But then the other thing, which was intended to go in the original bill, but did not get into the original bill, is the purpose of the bill, which is if a person goes to vote and presents a non-citizen ID, the poll worker must give them a provisional ballot rather than a regular ballot, so that and then that person must verify that they've since become a citizen so that their vote will be counted. And when we work the bill, we will have those two amendments for it, but I wanted to tell everybody up front before we proceeded. Okay. So we may have that hard copy before we're done with testimony. All right, I'm going to open proponent testimony. I'm going to ask that all the conferees today, because we have a very full schedule and a lot of people who want to talk, I'm going to ask that all conferees keep their testimony to 2 minutes so that we have time for questions after your oral testimony. I'm going to begin with proponent testimony, and the first proponent I have listed is Mr. Clay Barker. Welcome back to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Clay Barker, General Counsel for the Kansas Secretary of State. We are in support of this bill, and testimony is only from the election system perspective. I don't know costs or benefits outside that. This would provide an extra layer of protection to ensure that non-citizens don't vote in our elections, either by mistake or intentionally. We readily acknowledge that non-citizen voting is very rare. The Coldwater mayor recently was one that made the national news. So far this year, 2 individuals have been indicted for non-citizen voting, 3 probably soon, and a few others are being looked at closely. And that's because we now have 2 tools we didn't have in the past, a temporary driver's license, which this committee passed last year, and the federal SAVE. I note that this is a very popular position with voters, and as elected officials, you need to respond to what the voters want. The Secretary is also concerned, and this bill helps protect people that get on the voter list by mistake and might show up thinking they can vote when they really shouldn't. Putting it on the driver's license is no burden at all to qualified electors, so it doesn't harm anyone in that respect. The data is already available, and it's the first thing that's asked when you get a driver's license. And at the polling place, the driver's license will be swiped through the electronic poll book, and it can tell you if there's a problem or the DL number on a written ballot. And I would just like to comment that in the federal court case that found documented proof of citizenship unconstitutional, the judge laid out a roadmap for the state of how to identify non-citizen voters, and we have been following that rigorously, and the provisions were list comparison with the Department of Motor Vehicles. We've done that. You pass it into law. DMV training. We've done that several times with DMV. Using the USCIS's SAVE program. We've done that, and you put it into law, and it's a very useful tool now that it's been enhanced. Prosecutions. The Attorney General is willing to take these on at any time. Juror questionnaires. Good idea. Doesn't work very well because everyone that checks non-citizen turns out to be a citizen just trying to get out of jury duty. Other things we've done is we've improved the form. So if you check not a citizen electronically, it will stop you, or there's a big warning, don't go on if you've checked non-citizen. We've also got 2 bills in front of you. One is to have other agency non-citizen reports we can compare to the voter rolls, and then the driver's license non-citizen flag. And I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your testimony. Almost 2 minutes. And I'm going to have everybody, all the proponents testify, and then we'll call you back up if people have questions. So thank you. Our next conferee is Jacqueline Doyer online. Are you there, ma'am?
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Please go ahead. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Proctor, members of the committee. I'm here to testify in support of House Bill 2448. I am the Legal Policy Director for Honest Elections Project Action. We're a nonprofit dedicated to defending the right of every American to vote in free and honest elections. This bill requires state-issued driver's license and ID cards to clearly indicate citizenship status, and this is critical to safeguarding Kansas election integrity. It's simple but effective and will make it easier for election officials, particularly with those amendments that Chair Proctor laid out, to protect against illegal voting and deter fraud. Kansas law already requires individuals to present an approved form of photo ID when voting in person, and driver's licenses and state ID cards are considered those acceptable forms of identification for voting. But Kansas does issue these to non-citizens who are lawfully present, and there's no clear visual distinction between the cards that are issued to non-citizens and those that are issued to citizens. This presents a significant vulnerability in elections. There are recent cases in Kansas and other states that have shown it is possible for non-citizens to register and vote illegally. Just recently, the mayor of Coldwater, Kansas, was charged with repeatedly voting illegally as a non-citizen. So without that clear designation, an ineligible non-citizen could present what appears to be a valid license, a Kansas issued driver's license or ID card, and vote without triggering any additional scrutiny from an election official. So this is a straightforward solution to that problem. This bill does not put any new burdens on Kansas residents. Kansas law already requires that somebody applying for a driver's license or an ID card has to present proof of lawful presence. So that's already required. And then anybody who is a naturalized citizen would have the opportunity to just present proof of citizenship to have that ballot be counted. This is a common sense measure, and it should be something that is advanced to protect the integrity of Kansas elections. Thank you, and I stand for questions when the appropriate time.
All right, thank you for your testimony. Committee, we have one other proponent listed, but he is not going to be able to testify in person, so he wanted his testimony just to be written. Is there anybody else wishing to speak as a proponent on this bill? Okay, seeing none, committee, are there any questions for any of the proponents? Mr. Ranking Minority Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Deputy Secretary Barker, if I got a few. They say it's common sense, it's an easy, but can non-citizens vote?
It's a crime if they vote.
Okay, so when they register to vote, do they have to prove that they are a citizen?
There's no documentary proof of citizenship. They check a block on the registration form saying under penalty of perjury that they are a citizen.
So how many non-citizens are voting today and that are fraudulently voting?
I couldn't give you a precise number. I can tell you what I mentioned before is 2 have been indicted, 3 probably soon, and 10 are being looked at closely. We get lists from these, for instance, SAVE, and we internally whittle it down until we have people that looks like there's reasonable suspicion, and we'll turn it over to the AG.
And in past hearings, though, when you whittle it down, it turns out there's not fraud. I mean, that's what's been testified before last year. And so this comes across, and I understand why you're making the recommendation, because you're solely focused on the Secretary of State's office and what will improve, and not going outside of that, in which this definitely brings profiling in, because if I'm a police officer and I pull up and there's a driver's license and you're not a citizen, I mean, that has some ramifications that we need to consider. But I just go back to this comes across as like last year in the constitutional amendment, you really need to be a citizen. I mean, so help me out. If you can't vote, if you're a non-citizen, why is this really needed?
Mr. Ranking Minority Leader, it's just one more layer of protection, one more prophylactic protection, either to make sure someone doesn't vote by mistake because they somehow got on the voter registration list, they're getting cards to come out and vote, and they think, well, the government must be right, they sent me a card and I'll show up, or occasionally somebody may do it with criminal intent.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, it's been a long day, and I want to apologize for this. You always deliver solid testimonies, and I appreciate the service in your office as well. So thank you for the answers.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Barker? Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Barker, as far as last year, we did a change with, that there is a driver's license already that people who are not citizens, this sort of temporary license, or how does that differ currently from a regular driver's license? I mean, there is some sort of indicator currently, is there not?
Mr. Vice Chair, the first question you're asked when you go in to get a driver's license is you must prove your legal presence in Kansas, and that's either with documents that show where you live, or if you're not a citizen, you must bring in documents showing you have legal status in the United States. And if you're not a citizen, your driver's license is coded as a TDL, a temporary driver's license, but there's no indication on the face of the driver's license that you're not a citizen. And only recently have you passed a law last year, we get a quarterly report of that and compare it to the voter rolls to see if anybody's on both lists.
And if I can, so the TDL is already a currently existing driver's license, that anybody who filed for a driver's license who isn't a U.S. citizen, I'm going to be a naturalized or a person with a green card or whatever, but they would have this TDL license, is that correct? But it looks identical to a regular license, it's just, if you look in the fine print, you'll see TDL on it, is that how that works?
Mr. Vice Chair, I'd have to verify that with the Department of Motor Vehicles, but I believe there's nothing on the face of the license that indicates it's a temporary driver's license. It's just something in the database coded that way.
So there would be nothing that the poll worker would be able to pull from the TDL license?
Not currently, Mr.
Not currently.
Chair.
All right, thank you.
When they swipe it through the electronic poll book, it just comes up with the individual, and you verify the picture and name.
Got it. Thank you.
Representative Mosley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are there any citizens that could have like a Kansas, I'm an American citizen license that would not be eligible to vote?
If you're under the age of 18, you wouldn't be eligible to vote, though you could pre-register. If you're a felon, or under...
So this wouldn't solve it for felons. Okay, so this license, what you're saying, will give someone like let's say that, hey, you have the freedom to vote. You have privileges that are available to you that's not available to others, correct? So this is like the license that says I'm an American citizen says that I have freedoms that someone who is not a citizen would not have. That's what that license is saying.
The way the bill is intended to function, Representative, the license indicates you're not a citizen. It's a protection to make sure that person doesn't vote.
Okay, so freedom papers, essentially. So we are profiling people and saying that there are folks that are going to have different privileges, which have historically happened to Black people in this country, has historically happened to Asian people during the Chinese Exclusionary Act, it happened during Japanese internment. So how's this bill different by making it say that you are a citizen, you're potentially going to be profiled for the sense of voting? This is one activity that people do 1 or 2 days out of the year, every 2 to 4 years, because you guys are trying to make them only even years. I'm finishing, sir. Thank you.
Ask a question.
I'm asking my question. So how is this different?
Representative, first, it's in the state constitution and the federal constitution. You must be a citizen to vote. Just because you have a driver's license doesn't mean you can vote. You also have to be registered.
So you have to be registered to vote, which is something that you're doing. You're going to check a box saying that you are eligible to vote when you register to vote. So what is the point of this besides making people be profiled, potentially being profiled? There's more risk of making this a law for people to be profiled than solving 1 or 2 days out of the year as people vote, correct?
Representative, I understand the profile argument. That's why I started my testimony by saying we were looking at just the election system. When somebody walks into the polling place and presents a driver's license as their ID, it's just one more layer of protection, and we acknowledge it'd be very rare that it would turn up. Somebody would not be a citizen, and then they would get a provisional ballot because maybe they had become a citizen, but their driver's license hadn't been updated.
Sounds like freedom papers. Thank you.
Representative Simmons. And I'll ask that all conferees be respectful of each other and
Respect.
the conferee.
I respect everyone in here. Thank you for your public service. Thank you for being here, Mr. Barker. So I'm really interested in the documentary proof of citizenship aspect of this proposed law. Does everyone have DPOC records at DMV? Do you know?
Representative, so this would not be, you wouldn't have to prove citizenship. It's the converse. If you're not a citizen, your license would indicate that. And not everyone's going to have a driver's license or a state-issued ID. There are other forms of ID that this wouldn't apply to. For instance, my badge is perfectly valid ID. It's state-issued, picture, name, but it wouldn't indicate citizenship on it.
Thank you. And what happens for voters to cure their provisional ballot if they don't have documentary proof of citizenship?
Representative, so if their driver's license indicated that they are not a citizen, they'd be given a provisional ballot and it would vote, and they would have an opportunity to go to the county clerk or inform the county clerk that they really are a citizen and they just hadn't updated their license for whatever reason.
Thank you.
Okay, take chair privilege here really quick. So I want to highlight something that you just said. So when somebody who is not a citizen goes to the DMV to get a driver's license, they have to present documents that prove that they're in the country legally, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair. And it's my understanding they also use the SAVE program, DMV does, to verify the immigration status of the person.
And so the government already knows who's a citizen and who's not a citizen when they issue that driver's license. They're not going to be asking anything new, correct?
Correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. The next thing, and this is really just for posterity, people watching at home or whatever, I've heard multiple people say that, well, we're a real ID state and you can't get a driver's license, you can't get a real ID if you're not a citizen. Is that true?
Oh, that's a common misunderstanding. The real ID just indicates that you have proved to a certain level that you are the person your ID says you are. It is not an indicator of citizenship.
Thank you. And then the final thing, is it legal for an illegal immigrant, somebody who's in the country illegally, to get a driver's license in the state of Kansas?
As far as I know, it is not, Mr. Chair. And again, there's a distinction between someone who's a non-citizen in the country legally, they can get a driver's license and certain benefits, and illegal immigrants, or those that without legal status cannot get those. And we have never had an incident that I know of where an illegal or immigrant without legal status has attempted to vote or get registered. It may have happened, but we're not aware of it.
And my final question, and then I'll, then Representative Meyer, then the Vice Chairman, and then for a second time, Representative Mosley. And this is outside of your realm of expertise, but everybody else is asking you questions outside your realm of expertise, so why not? Have you heard any reports of ICE going around rounding up legal residents of the United States and the state of Kansas? Have you heard any of those reports?
I have not, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, Representative Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was a really interesting question. I have, with respect. Thank you for being here today. So my question for you was, it was along the lines of what Representative Simmons had brought up. So what would happen if an individual who had been registered to vote for years, had never had any issues, is a citizen, what would happen if they were unable to find their DPOC, like any of their records, their birth certificate? Let's say they were born out of state and, you know, this, I mean, how are they supposed to go about doing this without getting their rights to vote infringed further?
So, allow me to clarify, Representative. So they are a citizen, or they?
They are, and they've been, so let's say they are a citizen, they've been voting forever. You know, they're an older person, maybe they don't have access to their documents anymore. You know, it could occur in cases where a person had been divorced and remarried multiple times, so they've had multiple name changes, difficulty getting access to those records. But they have always been voting, and they are a citizen, but now requiring them to have a citizenship display on their license or whatever. Would that not be disenfranchising them? I mean, they've been already voting forever.
I don't believe so, Representative, because the license wouldn't say you are a U.S. citizen. It would indicate
Say
you're
you
not a citizen.
are not.
And that can be verified through the federal government's SAVE program. They keep the records of all.
Well, what I'm thinking about here is kind of along the lines of like with the real ID, a lot of people can't find their documents or don't have access to them. So I'm concerned that like if they don't bring in their documents saying that they are a citizen, then they're automatically going to be labeled not a citizen. And I understand you're trying to explain that, but I think that there's a lot of barriers for people involved in this, and I'm just trying to get some more clarity on that.
Representative, I think no one has to prove they're a citizen. It's if you're listed on the database as not a citizen on that temporary driver's license list, it would be on the face of the driver's license. It's already coded into the database.
I'm sorry, I'm just not following this very well.
Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The secondary question I have is about, you know, the driver's license is the primary, you know, photo ID people use, but some people do, there are government-issued IDs, other photo IDs. Would this help at all on those, or this is strictly related to driver's licenses?
The way I read the bill, Mr. Vice Chair, is driver's license and state-issued ID. Like, I have a special needs daughter. She can't get a driver's license, but her ID looks like one, just slightly different numerical coding. It would be on that also. But it wouldn't be, for instance, on like government-issued badge.
Okay. Okay. So it would apply to other state of Kansas issued IDs.
Cover the overwhelming number of the IDs that are used when people go in to vote.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Representative Mosley for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and respectfully, Mr. Barker, thank you for being here. Can you give me an example of other IDs that people, that's not a passport, which would have your citizenship on there, the other IDs that are eligible for folks to use to vote?
Representative, they're listed in the statute.
Can you just give me a couple examples? Just for the crowd, oblige me, please.
Anything issued by a state government that has a picture and your name on it, For instance, university identification cards are acceptable because as long as it's a state-run university.
So let's say, for instance, I show my state ID, my state-issued student ID, and it doesn't have that citizenship stamp on it because it's not required. Does that solve the problem that you distinctively said there's not really a lot of instances of it? So I'm trying to find the solution, the problem for the solution. That doesn't solve for that, does that?
Well, again, Representative, there is no citizenship on the ID. It's not citizen.
Okay, so I think we should just actually just give them stars, and I'm done questioning. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the proponents? All right, thank you, Mr. Barker, for your forbearance. Our next, I'm going to move on to neutral testimony now. The only conferee I've listed neutral is Catherine Bennett. Are you there, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Welcome back to the committee. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Catherine Bennett, and I am the Director of the Process and Procedures Task Force at the American Legislative Exchange Council. As a 501c3 nonpartisan organization, ALEC is dedicated to the principles of limited government, free market, and federalism. Based on nonpartisan research and analysis, indicating citizenship on a driver's license is a straightforward, effective tool that helps election officials do their jobs with confidence. Legal immigrants are fully entitled to apply for a driver's license in the state of Kansas, but only citizens are eligible to vote. When Kansans arrive at the polls on Election Day, they deserve a check-in process that is both simple and unquestionably secure. A citizenship notation provides election workers with an immediate, reliable way to confirm eligibility. It does not slow the process, but it does significantly strengthen the integrity of our elections. This small change would create a substantial impact. There are also clear benefits for law enforcement. 19 states currently issue driver's licenses to illegal immigrants. A growing number of states are following Florida's lead by enacting laws that prevent illegal immigrants from driving on their highways. Oklahoma is currently considering a law that would treat any out-of-state driver's license issued to an illegal immigrant as invalid and charge any driver with such a license with a driving without a license charge. South Carolina is looking at a similar bill. As more states take up this issue, a citizenship notation on Kansas driver's licenses would give law enforcement a fast, accurate way to determine citizenship status when necessary. It is a practical tool that supports officers in the field and reduces ambiguity in rapidly evolving situations. ALEC recently published the Protect Your Highways Act, which includes a straightforward requirement to note citizenship on driver's licenses. This is neither radical nor controversial. It is common sense. Citizenship is a basic identifier that supports law enforcement and strengthens the integrity of our elections. Kansans deserve confidence in a system where voting is simple and cheating is not. A clear citizenship notation does nothing to burden lawful voters, but it does make it far more difficult for bad actors to exploit the system. This is a practical safeguard that protects both our roads and our democracy. Thank you, and I'm happy to stand for questions.
All right. So before I go to questions, is there anybody else wishing to speak as neutral? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to questions. Representative Mosley, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Miss Bennett, thank you very much for being here, and thank you for your testimony. Did you seek out this legislation, or were you invited to testify?
I was invited, ma'am.
Oh, thank you. And then can you tell me of other instances where showing your ID is appropriate in day-to-day life?
Off the top of my head, ma'am, whenever you buy alcohol or cigarettes or get a ticket for an R-rated movie, you are asked to show your driver's license or a form of ID.
Oh, to be young, right? I'm well beyond that point in my life. So thank you very much for telling me those instances. Is it important for those folks to know if you're a citizen or not? Because you're more likely to interact with the world in those instances than the few times a year that you're voting, or now that we're trying to do every other year. So let's say even number of years. So is it important for the guy who is selling you alcohol to know if you're a citizen or not? And could that potentially be a threat to you in this climate?
Ma'am, I would say that while it is not pertinent to that situation, the ability to safeguard our elections is an important enough issue, particularly when it is proven in several cases to be a problem with illegal immigrants or non-citizens attempting to vote in several states in our country, that this is a practical safeguard that is worth the possible inconvenience in other circumstances.
So let's say, for instance, I am a student at the University of Kansas, and and I'm from California, and I go and I register to vote because I'm legally allowed to register to vote at the place that I'm going to school, and I use my California driver's license. That doesn't solve for that, does that?
I can't speak to what would happen if you're crossing state lines and registering to vote in that particular setting.
Well, you're legally allowed to vote across those lines, so you're legally allowed to vote in the place that you're going to school. I'm pretty sure you know that, correct? Yes, you do. You do, yeah, you know that, right? So you're legally allowed to vote. Like let's go closer. Let's
Representative,
go to, I'm finishing.
No, I'm sorry. When you want to ask a subsequent question, you acknowledge the chair. When you want to ask a subsequent question, you address the chair, and there are other committee members who would like to ask a question. I will come back to you if we have time after.
Respectfully, Mr. Chairman, respectfully, we are all elected and have every right to be here and speak with the
Okay.
conferees.
Is there another committee that you've ever been in where you don't ask to ask a subsequent question of the chair? I don't know of any committee where that's not the rule. So I'm going to recognize Representative Chauncey. If you have a question, I will recognize you. Representative Chauncey.
This sounds a lot like
Representative, you're out of order. I have recognized Representative Chauncey. Yes, and I have addressed her point of order. I do not accept that point of order. She's incorrect. The rules say that you ask to ask subsequent questions. I now recognize Representative Chauncey.
If I may ask a clarifying question, how would you like us to contextualize our questions?
Representative, I did not say anything about the manner of her question. I said something about the fact that she didn't ask a subsequent question and then ask 3 questions in a row. We're going to move on. Representative Chauncey.
Just to maintain decorum, I'm going to defer my question.
Okay, do you have a question, Representative Simmons?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, Ms. Bennett. Welcome back. I read through your testimony, and it reads to me very strongly like proponent testimony. Is there anything in this legislation that you would criticize to balance out the proponent points that you highlight to make this a neutral testimony?
Ma'am, I'm not speaking to the specific bill in front of you. What I am doing is providing an analysis of such a policy measure as we have written and spoken on as the American Legislative Exchange Council publicly before.
So are we to deduce that all of the celebratory language in your testimony is not meant to encourage us to support the bill that you submitted it for?
Ma'am, how you interpret my analysis is entirely up to you. However, I will state that this is not speaking to the bill in front of you as whether or not you should act one way or another. What this is doing is analyzing such a policy measure.
The American Dictionary would disagree. Thank you.
Do you have another question, Representative Simmons? Okay, so I have been handed from the standard committee rules, rule number 6, the chair reserves the right to limit questions of the committee members. But I would, if you would like to ask another question now, that would be in order, Representative Mosley.
Well, I'll save it for the proponents, thank you. Or the opponents, thank you.
Are there any other questions for the neutral conferee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. I'm going to open opponent testimony, and the first conferee that I have listed is Logan DeMond.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Logan DeMond, and I'm the Director of Policy and Research at the American Civil Liberties Union of Kansas. You heard it from the Secretary of State. Non-citizen voting is increasingly rare, vanishingly rare. What this legislation, House Bill 2448, is part of a much larger, coordinated attack on civil rights and immigrant communities, raising serious concerns regarding privacy, discrimination, and public safety, which is where I'd like to begin. This bill creates yet another mechanism through which individuals may be pressured to disclose their citizenship and immigration status in everyday interactions where that information is completely unnecessary. This unnecessary disclosure invites discrimination and profiling, as we've already heard through the lines of questioning, and creates a two-tiered system of identification that treats people differently based on their citizenship status. It's important to note that most members of the public, and even frontline workers, don't understand the complex distinctions between different types of citizenship, permanent residency, permanent visas, humanitarian protection, or temporary visas and humanitarian protections. And this legislation doesn't even make clear how these various classifications would be distinguished. It's also important to note that at a time when Border Patrol agents are wielding unprecedented control in an increasing number of cities across the country, this legislation hands these agents and hands law enforcement another tool to identify and to target individuals based on their citizenship status when they pose absolutely no threat to their community. And when people fear that applying for a license will expose them or their family to undue discrimination, they may avoid the licensing system altogether, which is then a threat to public safety. Concern for civil rights and civil liberties aside, we're struggling to find the ways in which this bill actually benefits election integrity. Even with the amendment that was mentioned at the beginning of this hearing, this places the additional burden on the voter of coming back and proving their citizenship status, and once again, making it harder for eligible citizens to vote rather than making it easier for them to do so. Moreover, tying citizenship status to driver's licenses doesn't address how citizens actually register. Finally, I know time's running short. I want to take us back to 2011, which I referenced in my written testimony and documentary proof of citizenship. There was little evidence of a problem in 2011. There was little evidence of a problem in 2018 when this law was struck down, and there is little evidence today to take this unnecessary step. This legislation does not seek to strengthen elections, but to identify the various circumstances under which individuals reside in Kansas. For these reasons, on behalf of the ACLU of Kansas, I strongly urge members of this committee to oppose House Bill 2448. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next conferee is Israel Sanchez.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I oppose HB 2448 because it is unnecessary and discriminatory. It is a solution search for a problem that doesn't exist. Kansas has been down this road before. Policies built on suspicion instead of evidence have led to exclusion, costly litigation, and harm to eligible residents. We should not repeat those mistakes. More importantly, this bill creates two classes of people who live in Kansas. By placing status directly on a driver's license, this bill would single out lawful residents and immigrants who are here legally, who work, pay taxes, and contribute to our communities. With increased ICE activity and widespread fear in immigrant communities, like what's happening in Minnesota, this bill sends a dangerous message. It tells people that the state of Kansas is willing to turn a driver's license into a tool beyond its intended purpose. When people are afraid to drive, to carry ID, or to interact with institutions, public safety and trust suffer. So to end, this bill is discriminatory, unnecessary, and dangerous, and therefore I oppose it. And I'll stand for questions when appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next conferee is Rabbi Moti Reber. I'm sorry if I've butchered your name, sir.
Oh.
First shot.
You even did the German pronunciation of the RIE. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And members of the committee. I am Rabbi Moti Reber. I am the executive director of an organization called Kansas Interfaith Action. We are a faith-based statewide issue advocacy organization, mostly working with mainline denominations, congregations, and people of faith and conscience throughout the state. I'm here, obviously, to oppose HB 2448. There's two bases of the opposition, as you've heard from the other conferees. The first one is, needs to be said, and I italicized it in my written testimony, there is no evidence of non-citizen voting in Kansas. We can continue and address this. It doesn't exist. We can continue to address a problem, pass laws, make people jump through hoops for a problem that doesn't exist. I put it to you that what undermines citizen confidence in voting is the incessant insistence that there is non-citizen voting outside of all proof. That's one. The second one is the possibility, as you've heard from the other conferees, the possibility of ethnic profiling. in a random traffic stop or in any other situation, harassment or ethnic. We've seen out of control, lawless, and violent immigration enforcement throughout the country. People are in danger when they have, who are non-citizens are in danger when they encounter law enforcement. They could be held, ICE could be called, and they can be disappeared. Now, maybe that wouldn't happen every time, but the possibility that it could happen is reason enough to oppose this bill. And I get points for quoting the Old Testament, so I'm going to do that right now. When a foreigner resides among you in the land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you are foreigners in Egypt. Every person possesses inherent dignity, and our laws should reflect a commitment to the common good and the protection of the vulnerable. We do not want the driver's license to act as a yellow star. This bill could put some of our most vulnerable neighbors in danger while doing nothing to address the non-existent problem of non-citizen voting. We urge you to vote no on HB 2448. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next conferee, I will get it right this time, third time's a charm, Melissa Styler.
Hi, how are you all? Melissa Styler with Floodlight Civic Action. Good to see you. So I'll be pretty quick because I just want to point out that we're testifying on a bill that simply doesn't exist. The explanation that was given by the Secretary of State's office is not in the text of the bill. The amendment is conceptual at this point in time. This hearing could have been rescheduled to make sure that all of us had the adequate opportunity to really look at this. But I know that because I gave this to you in advance, you all had the opportunity to brush up on your constitutional law. And so I'm going to review some of that for the audience, though you all are experts, I'm sure. So this has been tried before. Chris Kobach said the exact same things. He said that this would be seamless because the DMV already had all of this information. Now, the DMV doesn't magically know if you're a citizen, right? And I know that words have been said that it is only proving that you're not a citizen that requires this to be listed, but that's not what's in the text of the bill. Furthermore, what happens to all of our driver's licenses on July 1st? Does everything need to be reissued? What's the story here? That's also not in the bill. And so I'm going to just briefly talk through what needs to be considered whenever we actually see what this bill says and does at the end of the day, because we don't know yet. So whenever the courts are looking at the constitutionality of laws like this, and whenever they did in Fish v. Schwab, formerly Fish v. Kobach, they were looking at, did this fulfill the state's interest in preventing non-citizen voter fraud? No, it did not. They said that between 1999 and 2013, at most 67 non-citizens registered or attempted to register in Kansas over those 19 years, and almost entirely it was administrative errors by the DMV. So on the Secretary of State's point, it was really wonderful to hear that they've implemented a lot of the recommendations from this case as an alternative to DPOC, but they did not talk about the kind of training that prevents this administrative error. They talked about, does this fulfill the state's interest of keeping accurate voter rolls? No, it does not, because again, the amount of non-citizen voter registration that is a legitimate attempt by non-citizens to engage in any kind of part of our election process is statistically nothing. The courts and the evidence that Chris Kobach presented in this trial—
You're well over time. Please wrap it up.
—showed that it was statistically less than 0.0002%. Lastly, and of course you have my written testimony, I'm going to just close and say, even if this may be popular, what is popular is not always right, and I know some of you are also Catholics here, so you understand where I'm coming from, and whenever I say that lawmaking based on xenophobic propaganda is morally disgusting, and I expect a lot better from you all. So I'm happy to answer questions, again, about any of the other constitutional issues here.
All right, I don't have any other folks listed to speak as opponents. Is there anybody wishing to speak as an opponent? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to open opponent questions. Does anybody have a question for any of the conferees? Really? Okay, you got one? Okay, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Yes, let's go with the ACLU guy. If you can, okay, Mr. Demond.
The ACLU guy, my name is Logan Demond. Second time being before the committee, Mr. Vice Chairman.
All right, well, thank you, Logan. I guess the question I would have for you, if you're concerned about people being suspicious about driver's licenses, I mean, don't driver's licenses give your weight? So aren't they predicative of, people, making judgments about people's weight or about their age? I mean, your age is listed on your driver's license if you're concerned about scrutiny. I mean, where does the potential discrimination end with driver's license?
I think it's pretty simple. Driver's licenses exist to confirm one's identity, not their personal background.
Where you're predicating some of your opposition that somehow xenophobic Americans are going to be scandalized by somebody who has a non-citizen driver's license. Is it not the case also that people, out-of-state people, Florida driver's license are different from Kansas? They're easily identifiable. California, New York, places, Alabama. Is it not the case that people, their regional xenophobia might, should we not just have universal driver's licenses that don't look at all different from state to state?
All due respect, Mr. Vice Chairman, you know as well as I do, there's a very distinct difference between identifying yourself as a resident of another state and identifying yourself as an immigrant or a non-citizen in whatever fashion this legislation will do that.
I beg to differ. I mean, as far as exactly you're predicting a harsh reaction from citizens that I would think is improbable, and I just wanted to point out that we already have plenty of driver's license issues currently, if the truth be told.
If I could respond to that, Mr. Chairman, I would just say improbable is a stretch. The question was asked earlier, have we seen this happen in the state of Kansas? I can't cite a specific instance right now. What I'll say is, first it's one city, then it's another, then it's another. This is a slippery slope here. This is not to say that this won't happen in Kansas. Thank you.
Representative Berquist, is your question for Mr. Demond? Okay, go ahead.
I'm different than everybody else in the world, and people know the goods and the bad. And it's just a short preface, but when I was growing up, I was told that if you ever got stopped by a police officer, graciously hand him your driver's license and let him do what he needs to do. And if he comes back and gives you a ticket, thank him for doing his job and go on. Now, I was young, I was long-haired, I was different things that made me maybe a catch. In every case, I did something that was against the law. And I was told that that was supposed to be. Is there a problem with seeking to stop someone who's breaking the law if you think they might look different? If other people think they might look different, they might be a target. Should you be able to stop somebody because they break the law, even if they might be presumed to be being stopped for some other reason? Is it bad to stop people for breaking the law?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
And I'm talking about driver's license. So.
Thank you for the question, Representative. I'll address your first question first. Is it wrong to pull someone over because of the way they look? Yes. Is it wrong to pull someone over for breaking the law? No. What we're arguing in our testimony here is that by listing that immigration status, saying whether someone is a non-citizen or not, that subjects them to unfair treatment.
And thank you for your opinion.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have a couple of questions. One was for Melissa. Can I start with that?
Are there any other questions for Mr. Demond? Okay.
I actually do.
Oh, you have one for him too? Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Pew Research says that about 81% of Americans approve of voter identification laws. Gallup has about the same number. Why do you think Americans want voter identification laws?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, to be frank, Representative, I think it's because of laws like this. Laws which promote this conspiracy that election fraud is happening everywhere. It's happening every year, and it's jeopardizing our elections. Laws like this sow this confusion, stir up these conspiracy theories, which lead to dangerous outcomes like what we're seeing in this legislation.
How can you be sure of that if we really have, you don't have anything to validate those comments? How can you be so sure that there isn't any errors in voting? And how can you be sure to basically assume the reasons that 80% of Americans want voter IDs? Because that's a huge leap of faith, considering that there are at least 50% of those voters that are answering that survey who are of a different political persuasion that you are. So that's a pretty big leap. So can you give me any type of, I don't know, survey or study that would verify your position that it's because of laws such as this?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, thank you for your question. First, my particular political persuasion has nothing to do with this. I'm here today on behalf of the ACLU of Kansas. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. Now, to address your question, I'm not trying to brush aside the concerns of voters. I've already said where I think that comes from. What I am here to do is point out the flaws with this. And if you can remind me the second part of your question there, I'm sorry, Representative.
I want to know if you had any verification for your comment that 80% of individuals that want voter ID laws want so because of laws such as this, rather than the fact that they just want a fair election.
No, I can't comment on that specifically. What I can say is that we have experts, we have election officials, like the one that came and testified earlier, who said voter fraud, non-citizen voting is vanishingly rare in the United States and in the state of Kansas. We've heard time and time again from the Kansas Secretary of State's office just how secure our elections are.
Representative Mosley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this has been very unserious, but my question for you is that it was previously said that there is no instances of American citizens, and I wish I lived in a privileged world like that, but there's no instances of American citizens being targeted for not being citizens. Do you have any like recent instances where where non-citizens were targeted because of their immigration status in this country?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, thank you for the question, Representative. I don't think you have to look much further than the day-to-day news cycle right now to find those instances. Look to social media, you see every day what we are seeing with these masked agents across the country. As I said, this is part of a much larger attack on immigrants. I think we have seen this several times in Minnesota over the last few weeks as well.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, a follow-up question is for you. What are you more likely to do in your day-to-day life? Show your ID to vote, or show your ID to do, like, to buy a package of cigarettes, or show your ID to vote, or show your ID to buy an alcoholic beverage, or do something that you might have to be a certain age to participate in?
Mr. Chairman and Representative, thank you for the question. I think the answer there is the day-to-day activities. You know, as I think you mentioned in your line of questioning earlier, it's 1 to 2 times a year folks are using their ID to vote. Much more frequent that they're going to be using it in other instances.
Representative James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess we're talking about this, and we're talking about driver's license, but let me ask you this. Do you believe in law, what's right and wrong? Do you believe that if you break the law, you should be held accountable for it? And if there is a reason, if there's a way to prove that a person, so say a person murdered someone and a DNA test would prove him or her not guilty, do you just ignore that test? Wouldn't it be beneficial to have that knowing, especially on the other end where if you're the person's parents or whatever, that they did wrong? And that's what we're talking about here, is what we're talking about here is you don't belong in the United States unless you're legal. And if you are, you're visiting, you have permission to be here for whatever period of time. Just like when we go overseas, we have visas or whatever for work or travel or whatever. But shouldn't they be legal? And if they're not legal, this is this is a way to solve that issue. Why do you fight this so hard?
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Representative, thank you for the question. Whether somebody is here legally or not does not mean they have a right to be here or not. As I mentioned, there are several different statuses. This legislation, to bring it back to the bill, does not indicate the differences between these different statuses. So I guess I'm having trouble understanding what the question is.
Do you believe in right and wrong? There's a law, or there's a law that's either legal or illegal. So you don't have the right to vote if you're illegal. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So why wouldn't we want a system that prevents that 100%? And if this is a small tool for it, why wouldn't we want that? I'm good after that.
Representative, thank you. The question is this a surefire tool to achieve this? No, it is not.
Okay, so I've got Representative Chauncey and Representative Williams, and then we need to move on here. We've got another bill to hear.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real quick, do you, with the ACLU, do you guys believe there's a separate set of privileges, or I want to say privileges, separate set of laws that apply to citizens versus immigrants, legal or illegal? Do we have a separate set of rules for that?
I think there are certain things that you are entitled to as a citizen that a non-citizen is not.
Okay, so as an American citizen, you're entitled to vote. You dictate who we elect as far as different offices, correct? So you would say then that you have to be an American citizen to vote in American elections?
Yes.
So is this just another security measure to define that you are an American citizen?
No.
It's not?
No.
Okay, and just, I guess, one last quick question. Can you tell me what your acronym stands for?
My acronym, the American Civil Liberties Union.
Thank you.
Representative Williams.
Thank you for just one more quick question. There are 48,000 legal residents in Kansas. There are 15,000 that have temporary permits. Those individuals can legally acquire a license. And so how would you suggest that we absolutely, those poll workers, be able to verify that if there is no distinguishing mark on the license?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, thank you for the question. My response would be this law does nothing to change how someone registers. This actually doesn't deal with the poll worker at all as it stands right now. What I assume you're getting at here is the registration process, trying to make sure these folks can't even register to vote. And this does not address that.
Representative, you had a question for one of the other conferees?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question for Melissa. Melissa, could you share the part of your testimony that you impugn the motives of this committee, please?
I'm so sorry.
The testimony portion where you basically said we were xenophobes and so forth. Can you read that again?
Oh, that's not in my official written testimony because that's not in the,
Just please repeat what you just told the committee.
Oh, sure. Lawmaking based on xenophobic propaganda is morally disgusting.
Okay, thank you very much. Kansas House rules, which we actually use when there is not a specific rule for the committee, say that we may not impugn or question the motives, integrity, or good faith of its committee members. We should do so with respect, and if it is not, then it is considered out of order.
Point of order.
The chair is authorized to stop or redirect the testimony.
A point of order, Mr. Chair. She didn't request a point of order. The rules also state,
I think she's asking a question, Mr. Ray.
I thought she mentioned it to you. Well, I'll say point of order. The rules also state that we are not to be disrespectful to the conferee and that we are to treat them as we have been trying to treat them for many meetings now with the respect they deserve as they advocate.
And a point of clarification, I don't know if it's impugning the committee whenever I stated that as like a basic value of my faith, that making decisions that impact our entire state. I didn't direct any of this at any of you in particular. I'm saying that there's a risk of that when dealing with legislation like this, which sets off alarms as far as my moral code is concerned. I think that generally prejudicatory, discriminatory, non-evidence-based fact lacking kind of nonsense is not the best thing to bring into, you know, something that deals with our freedom to vote. So this isn't I'm sorry if you felt personally offended by that, if you thought that I said that, if you felt like it applied to you in some kind of way. I was just stating my moral code here.
Thank you.
Final question.
So, no, the reality is that you're actually questioning the integrity and the motives of this committee with your comments. Anyone, if I said that to you, if I said to my peers who are pro-abortion that I think they're murderers, I wouldn't do that. I would not do that.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
It is as an example. And
We'll have decorum in the committee room. The ranking minority member is recognized for a point of order.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Again, I repeat the rule that we are to respect each other and the conferee. And I'm still, sir, waiting for your decision on my point of order that I
don't
made.
think that she's asking a question that I think is a pretty darn good question, and I'd like her to continue.
The response that you gave, I'm asking a question to the conferee. The response you gave was that you could call us a xenophobe.
Did I say?
Yes, you did.
Did I say that you were a xenophobe?
You said to those that create legislation. Yes, you did, ma'am. Now, I am not good at giving the exact, but you can probably say it again if you'd prefer. Would you like to say it again?
Based on xenophobic propaganda?
That's right.
So that is a descriptor of an external thing, not a name that I've called you? Like xenophobic propaganda is not a human title?
So I will disagree. If I said that to you, you would be offended.
I think you've made your point.
Okay. But my point was the religious piece that you said. I would not unreligiously say the thing that I said, because even though it violates my faith as well. So I think it's very interesting. And Mr. Chair, I would say that her comments were out of order.
Do you think that there's a difference, just as a point of clarification, so that way I can make sure that I abide by
ma'am,
the rules?
you're not going to question the committee.
Oh,
so,
I just wanted clarification.
Yeah, she has expressed her opinion, and you've expressed your opinion. I'm going to end the questioning on this bill so that we can hear the other bill. So thank you, everybody who came today for your testimony. I'm going to close the hearing on House Bill 2448. After we do have the amendment that I talked about here now, so if you could have research handed out while you're talking about the next bill. I'm going to open the hearing on HCR 5021, if you could tell us what that does.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, House Concurrent Resolution 5021 would amend the Article 5 of the Constitution of the State of Kansas by adding a new Section 9, and the new section would provide every qualified elector shall present photographic identification issued by the state of Kansas or the government of the United States at the time of voting in any election. The implementation and administration shall be prescribed by law. The election would be, the concurrent resolution provides August the 4th of 2026.
Are there any questions for the reviser? So, Mr. Reviser, before we move on, something was said in the previous hearing that I think tangentially connects this, and I hate to have something on video forever without correcting it. One of the conferees said that it's currently in the Kansas Constitution that you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote. Is that in fact true?
There is a provision in the Constitution that to be a qualified elector, you have to be a citizen.
Okay, I don't believe that's correct. I believe we have an amendment that's going to be on the ballot in November of this year that would add U.S. citizen as one of the requirements.
It's true, but let me get the Constitution and I'll read exactly what it says.
Okay, thank you. All right, if there are no questions for the revisor, I will begin with proponent testimony, and our first proponent listed is Mr. Clay Barker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Clay Barker, General Counsel, Kansas Secretary of State. Good to be back. If the legislature wants to put photo identification enshrine it in the state constitution, the Secretary of State is supportive of that action. This would essentially, the way we read it, is take the current statutes and they would stay in place, but now they cannot be collaterally attacked legally as being against the Kansas Constitution because they would be in the Kansas Constitution. This is a very, photo identification, as Representative Williams mentioned, is very popular across the country, bipartisan. I'd say supermajorities support it. In 2011, when photo ID was brought into Kansas, it passed by supermajorities of both political parties, signed by the governor, and has been in law ever since. And it's the details of photo ID are set out in KSA 252908. H lists the various types of photo ID, and I is the exemptions. And Representative Mosley, you had asked about that before. I just emailed it to you. The different pieces. I don't believe there's a lot more to say, except that the reason this gives a lot of public confidence is because photo ID is one of the few election security procedures that voters experience directly. They go in to vote and they're asked to present their ID, and they feel confidence in the system that someone is making sure that they are the voter on the voter rolls, or that there's an ID number on a mail ballot, that they're being checked. The two, and I wouldn't call them concerns, but just things to be aware of, and it's brought up in some of the written testimony, is that you now have two constitutional amendments up in August, and there's a cost to those, both the ballot's longer and heavier if it's mailed, and also that the publicity, the mandatory publicity is paid by the State General Fund. And the second is this would lock in these procedures. It'd be much harder to change than a statute. The statutes would stay the same, details can be changed, but the requirement itself for photo ID would remain for until the people voted to take it out in case there's some future technology change that I can't foresee. And Mr. Chair, that's the end of my testimony. I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Hey, thank you for your testimony. I should never disagree with our revisor. It says every citizen as opposed to only citizens, and that's what we will correct with the constitutional
Mr.
amendment.
Chair, I know it's not in this bill. I understand what you're saying, is that the amendment on citizenship clarifies the language to make sure it's absolutely clear and it can't be challenged on a basis of wording.
Okay, thank you. So I humbly submit that I was wrong. Thank you. Our next thank you very much. Our next conferee is Linnell Griffith. Welcome back to the committee, ma'am.
Chairman Proctor, members of the committee, happy Kansas Day. Pleasure to be with you all. My name, again, is Linnell Griffith. Appreciate the opportunity to give testimony again. Currently, I'm serving as a Shawnee County Republican chairwoman. I am in favor of HCR 5021. I think it is self-evident that it is good to be able to prove that you are who you say you are when you go to vote, and doing that by government-issued photo ID. Because I feel that is such a self-evident truth, I had to dig a little bit deeper and think, well, okay, how can I present testimony on it to go deeper? And I thought of our founding fathers and the way those good people deliberated and argued. They were on the same team for freedom and for self-governance, but they worked so hard to get us the best U.S. Constitution that they can. And they kept on deliberating. They kept on doing the iron sharpens iron, getting us the Bill of Rights to make it extra secure. And so I think now we have before us now a similar opportunity to strengthen voter integrity with protecting our democratic process. What we've had so far with this bill of photo identification has served us well. And if you see it like a fence, know that eventually all fences probably need repaired. But when you recognize that what you are protecting is so valuable, maybe instead of repairing the fence, you'll build a wall. And so I am in support of building a constitutional, giving the electorate the opportunity to build a wall of a constitutional amendment to make this provision even stronger. And a word about walls. You can quickly tell if a nation is good or bad by if they have a wall, what they do with it. Are they having the wall to keep their people suppressed and keep them in? Or are they having a wall to protect their people, letting them go freely and just making sure that people who aren't citizens go through the proper gate of vetting? This gives us another wall of protection so that we can protect our democratic process and therefore continue to self-govern in our constitutional republic, in our great nation, that we need to remain the hope of freedom for the world, and hence keep our democratic process just as strong as it can be. Our founding fathers were looking at the generations to come, and we can do that here, giving the electorate the opportunity to vote on this. So we need this HCR 5021 to maintain the integrity of our democratic process so that we remain the nation of hope, freedom, and inalienable rights. As Kansans led the way in key fighter in ending slavery.
You're pretty over time. Could you wrap it up?
Let us again be leaders in the democratic process so that our self-governance is truly by the people. Thank you. I'd be happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time, and may God bless you all in your decisions.
Okay, committee, as I said before, Steve Green initially hoped to speak in person, but he's unable to, so he does have a written testimony on this as well. Our next conferee is Mr. Rob Fillion. Is he here? Okay, so he also submitted written testimony. I'm sorry, he's on WebEx. I apologize.
No.
Are you there, Rob?
No, this is Chris McGowan.
Okay, I apologize.
I'll let you know that I'm going to read his in when I read mine in as well, so I'll kind of have two overlapping.
Okay, would you like to go ahead since I know I got you on the net and you're ready to go?
Sure, I can do both. Yeah, why not? Yeah, happy to do so. No, thank you, Mr. Chair. So Chairman Proctor and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of HCR 5021, and I would agree with the previous proponent. Happy Kansas Day. God bless the great state of Kansas. HCR 5021 is fundamentally about election integrity and public confidence. Kansans must be able to trust that every ballot cast is lawful and that election rules are clear, stable, and consistently applied. Kansas already requires photographic identification to vote. This amendment is a non-idea, but instead places an important tool of election integrity into our state's constitution, a fitting place for a safeguard that protects the legitimacy of our elections. By doing so, it provides certainty for voters, election officials, and the courts, and helps prevent last-minute changes that can undermine confidence in the electoral process. Voter identification is a common-sense measure that protects against impersonation and reinforces the principle of one person, one vote. Even isolated misconduct or rare misconduct can damage trust in close elections, and election laws should be designed to prevent vulnerabilities before they occur. Importantly, HCR 5021 preserves the legislative flexibility by allowing the legislature to set the details of implementation of the law, including reasonable accommodations. This amendment simply establishes voter identification as a constitutional baseline for election integrity. Furthermore, the amendment is not about partisanship. It is about strengthening public confidence in the integrity and security of our elections. Voter identification requirements have broad public support across the political spectrum, from Republicans, Democrats, and independents in Kansas from all walks of life want to be confident that no one can cast a ballot in someone else's name. The popularity of voter ID reforms is not theoretical, it is reflected in real-world results from other states that have already asked citizens directly whether they want such requirements enshrined in their constitutions. For example, on April 1st, 2025, voters in battleground states of Wisconsin approved a constitutional amendment requiring photo identification to vote by a decisive margin. Yes receiving 62.79%, and the no position receiving 37.21%. In the coverage of post-election analysis of the vote, national political analyst Steve Kornacki of NBC News highlighted a particularly important point. Support for voter ID was strong even among voters who typically lean Democrat, not just Republicans. This is a sign that the issue transcends state party lines. Kornecki noted that in many of the most democratic areas of Wisconsin, the voter ID amendment still performed well, illustrating that voter ID is broadly popular among a wide cross-section of the electorate. This amendment passed even as Democratic candidate in Wisconsin's Supreme Court election won handily. By placing the ID requirement in the Constitution, the concurrent resolution would lock in widely supported election integrity measures that protects the credibility of Kansas elections, permanent so future generations of Kansas, regardless of political climate, know that elections rules are fair, secure, and transparent, and send a strong message to voters in Kansas that Kansas is committed to both elections and equal treatment at the ballot box. Opponents sometimes argue that voter IDs laws suppress turnout, but the Wisconsin example shows precisely that voters themselves, not just elected officials, want secure elections. Imposing sensible identification requirements do not limit access, rather it strengthens confidence that every legal vote is counted and that our democratic processes are respected. For all these reasons, I would respectfully request that HCR 5021 be passed and that Kansas can vote directly in this important constitutional amendment this coming year.
All right, thank you, sir, for your testimony. We have one more conferee, Jacqueline Doyer. Are you still online, ma'am?
Yes, I am.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Again, Jacqueline Doyer for Honest Elections Project Action. I'm here today to voice my strong support for House Concurrent Resolution 5021, a measure to enshrine voter ID in the Kansas Constitution. Voter ID laws are one of the most basic and elemental measures that states should adopt to safeguard elections. In fact, 36 states have done exactly that, leveraging these requirements to combat fraud and ensure that only qualified, eligible voters cast ballots. Despite frequent attempts to cast voter ID as controversial or even discriminatory, polling clearly shows that public opinion overwhelmingly favors voter ID laws. A Gallup survey from October of 2024, for example, showed 84% support for a requirement that all voters show photo ID to vote. Earlier polling that we did showed even higher support, 88%, with nearly 70% of the public strongly favoring these requirements. This is polling that is consistent with what we have seen over 20 years. In 2004, Rasmussen Research found 82% of all Americans, including 75% of Democrats, agree that people should show a driver's license or some form of voter ID before they're allowed to vote. Time and again, there is overwhelming support from Republicans, Independents, Democrats alike across racial, income, and age groups. In other words, these laws are neither controversial nor partisan, and voters expect strong photo ID requirements. After all, they already show ID routinely in daily life. You cannot cash a check, buy a beer, board an airplane, drive a car, rent a car, drive a car, rent an apartment, register your child for school, or get government assistance without showing ID. There are often grim predictions made by opponents that voter ID laws will disenfranchise large numbers of voters who supposedly lack proper identification. Those fears have never come true, and the data doesn't back that up. In 2019, the National Bureau of Economic Research published a report, and in its finding, which reviewed data from 2008 to 2018, they said, and I quote, "First, the fears that strict ID requirements would disenfranchise disadvantaged populations have not materialized. Using the largest individual level data set ever assembled to study voter participation, we do not find any negative effect on overall turnout and registration rates or on any group defined by race, age, gender, or party affiliation. Some studies have even found that voter participation in the Hispanic population actually increased after voters were required to implement voter IDs. So voter participation does tend to go up because people have more confidence in the elections. This was true in Georgia as well after Georgia passed its omnibus bill a couple of years ago to ensure—
You're really over time. Could you wrap it up?
Yes, sir. To ensure that voters have this confidence in Kansas, we should give the Kansas voters an opportunity to enshrine this in their constitution. And I welcome any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you very much for your testimony. This is all the people I have listed to speak as proponents. Does anybody else wish to speak as a proponent? Okay, seeing none, I'll open questions for proponents. Are there any questions for any of the proponents? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to neutral testimony. And the first conferee that I have listed, the only conferee I have listed to speak is Catherine Bennett online. Are you still there, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yep, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak again. I'm Catherine Bennett with ALEC. Based on nonpartisan research and analysis, photo identification requirements are a widely popular way to secure elections without suppressing voter turnout. Photo ID laws directly protect against several forms of election fraud, including voter impersonation, non-citizen voting, and individuals casting ballots in multiple jurisdictions. We know fraud happens, and even isolated incidents undermine public confidence. It is our duty as leaders in a democratic nation to eliminate as many avenues for fraud as possible. Requiring photo ID to vote is a simple security measure already required to buy alcohol, cigarettes, or even a ticket to certain blockbuster movies. It is not an undue burden to go through the same identification process to vote that one goes through to buy a beer at a ball game. These photo ID laws do not suppress voter turnout. Instead, they strengthen a system that hinges on trust. In 2025, researchers found that only 45% of the electorate was confident in our election system. This is an indictment of one of our most sacred democratic tools. Without trusted elections, no democracy can stand. 25 states already require photo ID to vote, including Rhode Island. These states know that a secure election is a trusted election, with 87% of Americans agreeing and supporting such laws. States have adopted photo ID requirements, also demonstrate these policies can be implemented fairly and responsibly. Many jurisdictions pair ID requirements with free state-issued identification cards, extended office hours, and provisional ballot options to ensure that every eligible voter can participate. These measures show that election security and voter access are not competing goals. They are complementary pillars of a healthy democracy. ALEC's Valid Voter Identification Act outlines our recognized best practices for requiring voter photo ID. Photo ID requirements are not a barrier. They are a safeguard. They protect the legitimacy of every lawful vote, reinforce public trust, and align with the expectations of an overwhelming majority of Americans. If we want elections that citizens believe in, we must adopt policies that strengthen, not weaken, their confidence. A secure democracy depends on secure elections, and photo ID is a reasonable, responsible step towards that goal. Thank you, and I'm happy to stand for questions.
Are there any questions for the, well, first of all, are there any other people wishing to speak as neutral on this bill? Seeing none, are there any questions for the conferee? Okay, seeing no questions, we'll move on to opponent testimony. Thank you for your testimony. Our first opponent is Ms. Ann Ma. Welcome back to the committee, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee, for allowing my testimony today. HCR 5021 puts an even more restrictive form of the current voter ID law in place into the Kansas Constitution. Not only should this not be in the Constitution, this committee should take a closer look at the current law and address the issues identified in 2017 by the Kansas Advisory Committee to the U.S. Civil Rights Commission. In particular, their finding that Kansas voting requirements may go beyond what has previously been challenged in court. I believe our voter ID law, if challenged, would be overturned, and that is why it does not belong in the Constitution. First, let me be clear. The voting ID requirement is a solution looking for a problem. We have secure and fair elections in Kansas, and we did in 2011 when the law was passed. I asked then Secretary of State Kobach in the hearings how many of the 41 cases of voter fraud he had identified for the committee would have been thwarted by the voter ID law. You know how many he said? 0. None. In fact, many of the cases he found of voter fraud afterward were folks voting in 2 places. Voter ID does nothing to solve that or any other voting problem. All we have done with voter ID in Kansas is to suppress the vote. It's not just the hundreds of votes each year that are not counted because of lack of ID. It's the unknown number who just gave up, like people that I identified in my comments to the Civil Rights Commission, which is attached to my testimony. Kansans were sold a bill of goods with the SAFE Act. We were told it was constitutional, like Indiana and Georgia. That was not true. In fact, the 3 things identified by the courts that had to be contained in a voter ID law were not followed in Kansas. My hope is that this committee will rightly reject this amendment and fix the current law, or in that alternative, some attorney will take what I wrote here, put together to take a challenge to the courts. I don't think it would be difficult to find plaintiffs. Our voter ID law doesn't stop fraud, it stops voting. I would be glad to stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next conferee is Melissa Steiler.
Melissa Styler, Loud Light Civic Action. I'll keep it quick. What's been talked about in this hearing so far also is not what's actually in the bill text, because this isn't codifying current law into our Constitution. This is reframing how we do voter ID, subject to future interpretation based on the text that is, proposed to be put into the Constitution. And so I want to point out a couple of things here. Our elections are safe and secure. I hope everybody is on the same page there, but just to be very clear, there's not been an impersonation voter fraud prosecution in Kansas that I've been able to identify for at least the past 20 years. We already have one of the strictest voter ID laws in the nation, and this would shift the purpose of voter ID laws from proof of identity to proof of who has the ability to overcome bureaucracy. Because the state of Kansas, not the long list of student IDs and tribal IDs and the wide variety of different types of IDs that you can get. This is issued from the state of Kansas, which could restrict it just to the citizen-only ID that we just heard in the last hearing, collectively creating a major restriction on who could have access to the franchise. This hasn't been proven to make elections more secure. Anything that's about keeping our elections secure, we have a responsibility to look at if it could be resolved in a way that is less burdensome to voters. But what it could be used as a way to deny people their freedom to vote. This would certainly result in disenfranchising thousands of Kansans who have eligible IDs now. Again, student IDs, tribal IDs, IDs that are from another state, not the state of Kansas, because that is no longer what is written in our Constitution, or that is no longer what is the law. What is in our Constitution is from the state of Kansas. And furthermore, I urge some delicacy when dealing with our Constitution. It's a sacred document. It should be given deep honor and respect, and only changed whenever it is absolutely necessary and with a lot of thought. Having a very quick hearing in which it doesn't even merit its own day to really look at the potential impacts that it could have on our citizens and our freedoms for the many years to come does not feel like
You're well over time, please
best
wrap it
use
up.
of our time. So I urge the committee to vote no and would be happy to answer questions when appropriate.
Next conferee is Logan DeMond, who, I apologize, we did not get him on the oral testimony list, but he'd like to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the wonderful committee assistant for getting me on last minute. My name is Logan DeMond. I'm the Director of Policy and Research with the American Civil Liberties Union of Kansas. Once again, we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that works to ensure and strengthen the civil rights and liberties of all Kansans. We're here this afternoon because we strongly oppose House Concurrent Resolution 5021, which unnecessarily complicates voter ID requirements and cements them in the Kansas Constitution, which creates lasting challenges in an effort to fix these mistakes. I believe this proposed amendment is redundant, it's restrictive, it is unnecessary. Once again, rather than focusing on making it easier for eligible citizens to vote, this proposal makes it harder. The Kansas Constitution already sets forth voter qualification, and Kansas law already requires that voters provide identification at the polls. All this is doing is adding an additional requirement to provide very specific types of photo ID. Currently, existing law allows for several types of IDs, such as driver's licenses, tribal IDs, student IDs, municipal IDs, even concealed carry licenses. We're now narrowing that definition. I'd also like to address the burdens of photo ID requirements. Across the country, we know that in-person voter fraud is vanishingly rare, as has been pointed out today, and I'd like to touch on a few of the groups this will most directly impact, especially for folks who have a driver's license, but they might have mismatched information that would present complications. Talking 11% of senior citizens, 20% folks with disabilities, low-income Kansans, 39% of them, and 35% of young voters. Not to mention people living in rural areas and those who lack basic access to get some of these documents. People of color are also disproportionately affected, with 18% of Hispanic Americans lacking an ID or having an information mismatch. I haven't even mentioned the thousands of voters, more than half, who risk being unaware of the change and bringing an invalid form of ID with them. Because this proposed amendment rewrites the rules for how individuals can vote, it rewrites who can easily vote. If Finally, I'd just like to touch on the dangers of doing this via a constitutional amendment. By pushing this through as such, you're limiting the ability of future lawmakers to come back and respond to the needs as they come up in the future. This committee should promote the values, our fundamental rights, broad civic participation, and not use our Constitution as a vehicle for redundant and restrictive policies. For those reasons, I encourage you to oppose HCR 5021. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you to all the conferees who spoke today. We are at 5. Is there anybody who will die if they do not ask a question of one of the opponents? Okay, seeing no questions or indications of physical distress, I'm going to close the hearing on HCR 5021, and we are adjourned.